Hello everyone and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, Phil, there's been two big industry events this week, which we can talk about as part of our regular shout-outs. Sadly, we were at neither of them.
No.
We've got all the details.
We have. I mean, I was slightly better positioned than you because I was in Lisbon when the one of them was on. But I suppose there's a choice of would you rather be in London or Lisbon? But that's a whole different story, which is all over my social feed. We won't go into now.
I did notice that you slipped in a crafty holiday this week.
Yeah, eventually, yeah. I felt more like Tom Hanks, to be fair, in the terminal that we sat in for 16 hours or whatever it was in the end. But anyway, we got there eventually, and a nice time in Lisbon, and luckily came back to some nice weather as well, to be fair. So, but yeah, I slipped in a little bit of a weekend. Very tiring city break as they seem to be, but no, it was a good bank holiday, I think. So no.
Yeah, those city breaks, they're great fun, but they are exhausting, aren't they?
You try and get everything you can into it as quickly as you possibly can, and then you come back and you need another holiday, don't you? By the time you've come back, but we get there anyway. We'll get there. So yeah, as you say there, Curtis, I mean, two events in the last week, and the first one is the AM Awards that we did mention last week that took place. That we're going to talk about some of the most notable winners and runners up. So AM have published that now on their website. There's a full list of the winners and the highly commended. For those awards down on AM Online there, and we'll get onto it in a little bit. But there was an interesting question asked by the friend of the podcast, John O'Hanlon from Waylands, which we'll get onto shortly.
Yeah, well, let's do that now because it was a good night for Waylands and John O'Hanlon, and I did notice on LinkedIn he asked. It was a kind of open-ended question. It was a rhetorical question. He asked what the plural of awards is because he did go home with quite a few awards. So it's either an armful or awardses, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it'll need a bigger shelf, won't it? But as you say there, they did win. I think was it 3? Could be wrong there if you are listening, John. Maybe I've missed one, but I'm sure it was 3 that you came away as a winner. But I mean, well done to you and the team there at Waylands. But as Curtis said there, the franchise dealer or dealership of the year was in fact Waylands Volvo down in Oxford. And I'm a friend of Simon Bishop who runs that Oxford site. So congratulations to Simon and his team. I mean, they do a lot of work in that business there, and well done to the wider Waylands team. And highly recommended was Trax Suzuki down in Exeter there.
Yeah, Independent Dealer of the Year. The winner there was Ponco. That's not a company I'm familiar with, so I'll definitely be going online to check them out. So congratulations to the team there at Ponco. Used Car Dealer of the Year, franchise and independent. The winner was Friend of the Pot, Luscombe's lead. So congratulations there to Robin Luscombe and the team. And highly commended in that category was Hartwell Automotive Group.
And we had Dealer Principal or General Manager of the Year, and the winner of that was Adam McCullough. He's the General Manager at Jardine Motor Jaguar Land Rover down in Wolverhampton, and highly commended was Malcolm Beattie, who is Dealer Principal there at MB Motors.
Dealer Group of the Year, up to 10 sites. It's our good friends, Waylands Automotive again. And Dealer Group of the Year, more than 10 sites, went to Trust Ford.
And finally, for now, we're going to say, the whole list is on AM Online, but the Retailer of the Year is Waylands Automotive. So, as I said before, well done to John and the team. Well done to and everybody else who won one of the categories down at AM Live, and those highly commended, and nominated for the awards. It looked like a fantastic evening, and congratulations to everybody involved.
And the other big event that was taking place over the course of the week, in fact, as we record this, it's still on, and that's the Financial Times' Future of Car event, which is actually in its 10th year, and it always attracts some big name speakers, and this year is no exception. And in fact, we've got a story this week from that particular event. And I know Cox Automotive were heavily involved in Future of Car this year, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I mean, we've been involved for the last few years, but as you say, it's the 10th anniversary of the event, and they've attracted some huge keynote speakers from around the globe in terms of involved with automotive. But as you say there, we have got a story on today's podcast that has directly come from the event. But if you go over to FT, you'll see many stories that, as they sort of talking to these keynote speakers and panel sessions, they are covering the content quite quickly through the Financial Times. There's a lot coming out. That's from people like BYD to speak of many that are down there at the event, either in person or joining virtually, depending on where they are in the world. So yeah, I think there's a lot of content coming out from FT Live, as there always is the future of the car. So always worth checking out FT news releases during that period.
And a shout out for the standalone podcast that we downloaded last week, which was our interview with Lewis Adamson from Geldards. And the interview focuses on the discretionary commission arrangements. And Lewis, as a senior solicitor, is heavily involved in DCAs, representing and advising dealers. And if you want an update on where we are with DCAs, definitely check out that standalone pod, which should be in your podcast feed.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, we have got many able moments again this week that will be on after the break with our friend and wellbeing guru Stephen Whitton, who will be looking at Mental Health Awareness Week.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
Headlines this week come from Motor Trade News, Car Dealer, the FT and AM. Starting with, new car market growth continues in April despite ongoing decline in private demand. New LCV market enjoys best April for 3 years, but demand for battery electrics plummets. Used car sales hit 5-year high as EVs grow in popularity. Ford says it's ready to restrict UK sales of petrol models to hit electric targets. And we have the latest update on Cazoo as it announces it will put its marketplace operation into administration.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated supplier specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
So the first headline this week is from Motor Trade News, and the headline is Market Growth Continues Despite Declining Private Demand. So this is the SMMT's data on new car registrations for the month of April, and it is positive in that it's the 21st consecutive month of growth. Growth was only a modest 1%, reaching 134,000 units, but it is actually the strongest April since 2021. But to put that into context, as we like to do every month, it's still 16.6% below those pre-COVID levels. So it is welcome news. It is good to see the market growing, but we've still got a long way to claw back to where we were pre-pandemic.
No, as you say there, and I mean the year-to-date figure is a little bit more encouraging. I mean the year-to-date takes it to now 679,822, which is an 8.4% yearly move there on the year-to-date performance. So yeah, although isolation April doesn't look that positive when you look at year-on-year, as you say there, Curtis, at 1%. But again, yeah, so the year-to-date does move that needle a little bit more optimistically in the right direction. As you say, still, there's one thing that we look at all the time. We say, is those pre-pandemic numbers. What does it look like in terms of you're taking away some of the volatility of previous years, but it's still fairly optimistic in terms of that move of direction for the market of that. And to put this into a little bit of context, the average between the year 2000 and the year 2019, so that period pre-pandemic, is 161,000. So, still a little bit, as you say there, Curtis, behind the running average for April, where you'd expect to be in a pre-pandemic market.
And it looks like I'm going to be the gloom merchant this week, Phil, because once you start digging into some of the data behind April's figures, and it's something the SMMT really does highlight, is that the growth once again is coming from the fleet sector, where registrations grew by 18.5% to reach just over 81,000 units, which actually meant that fleet accounted for 6 in 10 of all new cars registered over the course of April. So whereas private demand uptake there fell by 17.7%, so pretty similar to how the increase for fleet, which was 18.5%, private is down 17.7 to 50,458 units, while business registrations, so smaller fleets, was down 16.1%.
No, as you say there, and if you look at that from a year-to-date perspective, that fleet now as a year-to-date has a market share of 60% compared to 51.3% for the same period last year. And just supporting what you're saying there, Curtis, private year-to-date is down 11% now. So only representing 37.9% of the market share. But very little shift in that EV marketplace, is there? I mean, if you look at BEVs in isolation there, that now at a 10.7% year-on-year shift from 20,522 last year to 22,717 this year in April, and that accounts for a total market share of 16.9%. So again, needles moving in the right direction, but maybe not quick enough to where we need it to be is the big question around the battery electric vehicle market.
Yeah, because the SMMT does point out that the market was very much driven by electrified vehicles, and clearly that includes BEVs, but it also includes plug-in hybrids, which actually recorded the strongest growth. They were up 22.1% to take an 8% market share, followed by hybrid electric vehicles, which were up 16.7% with a 13% market share.
Yeah, so I mean, let's say there's a little bit of optimism in there, but again, there's still plenty to do in there, particularly when you look at the fuel share market for the cars. But switching over to the light commercial vehicles and going over to car dealers, saying that the light commercial for the sector, the LCV market, enjoys the best April for 3 years, but demand for, come get it there, Curtis, the battery electric plummets.
Yes.
Saying that the new light commercial vehicle market was up 5.4% in the month of April. It was the 16th consecutive month of growth, and but as I say there, the demand for battery electric vans has actually declined by 42.4%. So not quite as optimistic for both the BEVs and the market for the LCVs.
No, very disappointing performance there. So battery electric vans accounted for just 3.6% of all new registrations for the month, and that was down on 6.6% this time last year. So, and I'm assuming that's a mixture of, clearly falling demand, but I wonder if there's any supply issues there around vans as well.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? I know, following everybody that comments and involved with the EV market, and particularly for the LCVs around EV and the usability of these vehicles within that sector. It's still a challenging market, isn't it, for LCV? We've seen a little bit of optimism in the sector, but again, there is still some big challenging sort of targets for them to achieve, not just in 2024, but in the totality of where they need to shift the needle for LCV. So still a lot of pressure for the LCV market, particularly in the battery sector of it. And just finally, before we move on, just looking at some of the European figures, Italy was up 7.5% year on year, up to 135,400. Spain up 23.1%, albeit from a very low base point of total of 92,000 registrations. And Germany was up 19.8%, up to 243,100. So some very strong performances there, particularly with Germany and Spain in the European market.
Yeah, and maybe when we've got a bit more time, it'd be interesting to see what their split is between ICE and EV in some of those markets, because what we are seeing is, in terms of demand in the UK, certainly on the private side, that is being replicated in a lot of European markets where, again, the markets for new EVs is very much led by the business sector.
And so going over to car dealer, because we've had the much awaited first quarter used vehicle sales, which are classed by transactional changes at the DVLA. The car dealer report that used car sales hit a 5-year high as EVs grow in popularity, saying that the strongest start to a year for 5 years, say the SMMT, and that electric vehicles are the fastest growing powertrain in the used vehicle market. And Ford Fiesta was the most popular used car in Q1. Everybody still wants the Ford Fiesta still.
Well, it's a classic now, isn't it? A discontinued classic.
Yeah, future classic of the market.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think optimism is there that the first quarter transaction rose by 6.5% in the first quarter, and it was the 16th consecutive growth month, which the SMMT said is reflecting the recovering supply in the new car market, which is then in turn improving availability and choice of second-hand vehicles. Some might say they're being pushed in the new car market.
Couldn't possibly comment. and overall, I mean, that's 1.96 million units exchanged hands in Q1, and that's up from 1.84 in Q1 last year. So yeah, really positive performance there. And as you've said, battery electric vehicles are also highlighted within the story, because we're seeing those greater numbers being defleeted and going into the used sector. And in terms of EVs, sales in recent months are up by more than 2/3 to 41,505, according to the figures. And the SMMT has said that BEVs are now the fastest growing powertrain in the used market. So there's a good, strong message there, certainly for dealers, who, as we've seen the prices coming down, and there's that sort of hesitancy over, Do we invest in EVs for used car forecourt or not? Do we wait for the prices to come down more? Well, we can now see that those volumes are starting to hit the used car market. So there might be a bit more confidence in the market now in terms of stocking EVs.
Yeah, for definite. I mean, it's, we know that it is the very fast, it's the fastest growing powertrain entering the used vehicle marketplace, particularly in that 0 to 4, 0 to 3-year-old market as well. And the dealers are now starting to adopt that. They're starting to understand the EV sector a lot more. Obviously, we've had quite a bit of price alignment around those used EVs in the last sort of 12, 18 months. Which is making it a little bit better, but there's still, some volatility probably ahead. But just slightly back to the Q1 performance, to put the results into a little bit more context, compared to year-on-year 6.5% growth. But actually, if you look at the pre-pandemic figures, as I like to do, Curtis, is the average between the year 2001 and 2019 was 1.877 million. So actually, Q1 this year has beat the average of pre-pandemic by 4.8%. So it's it is an encouraging performance for this first quarter of the year. And if we think about the remainder of the year, that this week the Bank of England have held the base rate for the minute, that the second half of the year might be a little bit more optimistic from an economic outlook, then you can only assume that this might get even better as we go through the year there. So great performance all in all for the Q1 used vehicle performance.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand, wherever you are, and on your podcast feed. Next up is our latest Men-Able moment, looking at mental wealth and well-being awareness and best practice in the automotive sector. With me, Stephen Whitton. Yeah, hi guys, it's Men-Able Moments time again. As you can probably tell, I'm out and about, but not for anything specific other than just to get out. Because next week is Mental Health Awareness Week. And this year, the theme is about movement and getting out and about and not sitting on your backside and getting out and enjoying some nature and just using that to clear your head and just take a bit of a break, really. Now, I've often said when I look back at my time working in a dealership, actually taking time out to go for a bit of a walk, go for a wander, walk around the park, do whatever you want to do, all of that is easier said than done because it's a busy old life and there's always lots to do and it's always very reactive. And if you're in sales, you never really want to sort of just up and go out for fear that you might miss something. So I totally get that. But I have to say, all I can say from my experience is that the more I do to get out and experience nature and experience wildlife and all of that, the better I feel. In this case, I'm walking around the town centre and there's cars, which you can hear in the background, obviously. But it doesn't matter. It's all the same. So what are you going to do during the course of next week? What are you going to do for your team? How are you going to have them really recognising that it is Mental Health Awareness Week and get out and about and do what you can to help yours and their mental health? Now, I've heard some stories of some people in dealerships kind of taking it in turns to, when I say down tools, I don't mean that in a bad way, but to just take a break. 20 minutes, half an hour, it's all it needs to be, an hour if you can do it, and just go for a wander. Go in pairs, go in a little group, just have a little walk, and fingers crossed the weather's going to be quite nice next week for most of the UK. And just take in some nature, some fresh air, and just look around you and, observe what's going on. And it does wonders for clearing the head and making you feel a little bit better. So that's one thing you could be doing for next week. As I say, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme is about movement, getting out and about, and doing what you need to do to just take a break, get away from that computer, get away from the stresses and strains of the day, and just enjoy some fresh air and some sunshine. Fingers crossed for that. Couple of quick shout outs, and the first one is for Gavin White and his team at Autotech. They are a fabulous group of people, and I'm sure Gavin won't mind me mentioning, because he has been fairly public about it. If you know Gavin, you'll know that he was diagnosed with a brain tumour in the summer last year. Has been through some tough stuff over the winter, I guess. And he and his team are doing the 3 Peaks Challenge. And you can't get any more than getting out into nature than that, can you? But they're not doing it until the beginning of June. And it does involve doing 3 Peaks, Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike and Snowdon, which I think is called something else now, so answers on a postcard, but anyway. And they're doing that in the beginning of June. So, of course, they do have a Just Giving page. So I wanted to just give a quick shout out if you work with Autotech, or you've seen Gavin's post on LinkedIn. Have a quick look at that, and if you're able to support in any way, they're looking for people from our industry to help with not just donations, which would be amazing to go to brain tumour research, but also any transport and bits and pieces that you might be able to help with if you're in the area of those 3 peaks. So anyway, I'll leave that with you to have a little look at. And the second shout out is actually to all of our friends out there who work in body shops and repair centres. And next week, I'm delighted about this, we will be doing our first Wellbeing Winners programme with a body shop, which just proves the point that you don't have to be a big business or have loads and loads of time on your hand to do any of this stuff around well-being. These guys properly recognise that in moving their business forward and future-proofing it, one of the things they need to look at is culture, and within that it's the whole thing around well-being and making sure that their team want to stay and that they end up retaining good staff. So they're putting in some proactive work around that, so I'll be reporting back on that probably over the next few weeks. So there you go, Menable moments for this week. Get out and enjoy the weather that's apparently on its way all over this coming weekend and into next week, hopefully, fingers crossed. And do what you can out of your busy lives to take half an hour or an hour out and just go off and enjoy some nature and some time out and see how you get on. So, you know how to get hold of me if you want to have a chat. Stephen.Whitton@menable.org, or I'm on LinkedIn or the website menable.org. Okay, take care and speak to you soon.
Well, that team from Autotech, they're definitely getting out and about, aren't they, with the 3 Peaks Challenge?
Yeah,
we wish them well on that. And as Steve said, he threw in a couple of weather forecasts there. The weather does seem to be on their side, so good luck to them.
I think they don't want it too hot, though, do they? That's the the risky bit. Yeah, it's something I always fancied doing, but I mean, great work.
Well, there you go, Phil. You've got no excuse now.
Yeah, hope Gavin's not listening. No, I mean, but no, I mean, absolutely fantastic work there by, as Stephen said, that Gavin White and his team at Autotech. One on the 3 Peaks Challenge and what that's for, but actually what they're doing in general for the industry, and they're citing the challenges around recruitment and apprenticeship and things like this. But Autotech do some great work, and it's not always necessarily seen at the front end and covered, but they do some fantastic work there at Autotech for the sector in the more the sort of technician and recruitment and apprenticeships side of the sector. So if you are listening this morning, Gavin, then carry on the great work, and well done to you and the team, and we wish you all the best for that.
Yeah, definitely. And really a shout out for Steve, because he did mention the Wellbeing Winners and having a new company join that, a body shop. And I know Steve is very, very passionate about Wellbeing Winners, and it really is open to any company in the automotive sector, and you don't have to be a big dealer group. You can be a standalone independent, standalone site. But the program is amazing what he does, and do reach out and get in touch with him if that's of interest to you.
Yeah, definitely. So returning to the headlines now, just the last few stories for today, and we mentioned it earlier as just one of the stories that has come out in the week from the Financial Times on the back of the Future of the Car Summit. And as we said there, that Ford ready to restrict UK sales of petrol models to hit electric targets, saying that the US car maker will also push back irrelevant target of selling only electric cars in Europe by 2030. So, this is kind of Peter Campbell being Peter down at the Future of the Car event there that pushed the Martin Sander, who as part of his panel interview, who sort of pushed him on what Ford were going to do around the ZEV Mandate target and the whole UK electric vehicle market. And it's quite interesting on this one, Curtis, because I know at the time I heard a little bit from it through the old WhatsApp and groups there from people that were down at the event there. It's going to be interesting, this one, because we have muted this previously on the podcast, haven't we? That this is an option by the manufacturers to achieve their target.
Yeah, and it is an interesting one, this. And Martin Sander, who is the European boss of Ford, and he'll be familiar to a lot of listeners from his time as the MD of Audi in the UK. In fact, I sat down and interviewed him several years ago when he was at Audi. And as part of this presentation or Q&A that he did with Peter Campbell, he says, we can't push EVs into the market against demand. We're not going to pay penalties. We are not going to sell EVs at huge losses just to buy compliance. The only alternative is to make our shipments of ICE vehicles to the UK down and sell these vehicles somewhere else. So some pretty clear messaging there right from the top. So they're not going to mess around. If they're not going to hit their ZEV targets, they will reduce the number of ICE vehicles on sale in the UK.
Yeah, and it does seem to be that the UK government do seem to be coming under a lot of pressure from these global manufacturers now around the target of this year. And Ford are not the only one that have sort of muted this kind of opinion towards the UK government against their target and what their options are. And it is challenging now what they're going to be doing. And just something else that did happen at the FT event this week, and the Minister of Transport was being questioned around incentives to support the adoption of EVs, in particular, new and used EVs, and whether there is a price parity for used EVs now in the UK. And they believe that there is a price parity now between the EVs and the ICE vehicles. But my question would be is, who's paid for that? You and I were talking in the pre-show here. It isn't the government that's paid for it, it's the asset holders that have paid for this price parity. They are the ones that have taken the hits on the depreciation of the EVs over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years. They're the ones that have paid for this. Yes, we are there now in terms of some of those price points, but somebody's paid the price of that over that time. So, I think they're under a little bit of pressure at the minute. So we'll see. I mean, we're still only at the early stages of the second quarter of the year. So there's still a lot to play out in there before we get to the end of at least the 2024 ZEV mandate for that 22% for cars and 10% for LCV. But it seems to be under a lot of pressure at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. And also within this story, and following on from what you were saying about the government, because Anthony Brown, who's the UK Transport Decarbonisation Minister, he was quizzed on these fines that OEMs are liable to if they don't meet their quota, and the figure being bandied around is £15,000 per vehicle. But apparently at the conference, he said he did not expect car makers to end up paying fines. He said the UK electric vehicle market was in very early days, adding, "I'm not worried at all." He's not worried at all.
No.
He added that cheaper electric cars from established manufacturers and from new Chinese brands would help drive customers into electric vehicles. But I think it all goes back to pricing and confidence. It's confidence in making the transition to electric vehicles and confidence in the charging infrastructure. So there's a number of hurdles there that maybe elements of the government aren't actually seeing at the moment.
Yeah, possibly, or they don't want to see.
I'd
say it'll play out. We'll get there eventually by hook or by crook, and the manufacturers will find their best way to navigate through it all. It's a continuous story on this one, but we'll keep a close eye. But heading over to this final sort of story or stories of this week, and we'll finish with more updates from Cazoo. And the first one is in AM Online, that Cazoo announces it will put its marketplace operation into administration. And this is saying that the indebted online dealer group that stated this year it would relaunch as a car marketplace has given notice that could be about to call in the administrators. And this is in an update that the Cazoo Group said it had filed with the High Court notices of intention to appoint administrators for its subsidiaries, Cazoo Holdings, Cazoo Limited, which operates its marketplace business, and Cazoo Properties, which owns the majority of its leasehold. So it's quite a complicated story, isn't it? That this is because Car Dealer went with a slightly different header on this one, and they opened with the header that Cazoo files for High Court to place subsidiaries into administration. So clearly there's a lot going on with Cazoo as they try and navigate the best way to survive, I think, is probably the nuts of this one.
Yeah, definitely. And this follows hot on the heels of our story last week, where they were looking for additional funds, and they alluded to the possibility of administration within that if they didn't get the funds. Well, a week, as we know, is a long time in the automotive sector, and it looks like they haven't got the funds, and they are looking to file those administration notices within the High Court. And the key to the story, I guess, is the subsidiary Cazoo Limited, which, as you said, that operates the marketplace business. Now, the marketplace business only actually went live, I think, probably about 2 weeks ago, because that was going to be the pivot of the business from being an online digital retailer to being a marketplace. So still a lot to play out in this story. And as we were only saying last week, we'll probably have an update next week. So the same applies on this one.
I think it is the case, isn't it? So again, we'll see what happens. I know the share price is a little bit of a roller coaster, I think, as they are with these kind of things at the minute. But again, we'll see what does come out after they've got the final decision on what they're going to do as a business, and particularly around the subsidiaries that sit within the business itself. But that's it for this week. So hopefully the weather is right, and Stephen Whitton's Menable guru is accurate with his weather forecast, and we do get a nice long warm weekend ahead of us. And do keep an eye out and support Menable Week where you possibly can in Menable Awareness and Mental Health Awareness Week. Gives Steve his own week then, didn't I?
He did, yeah. He'll be pleased with that.
But you say more and more stories hitting the headlines. As I say, a lot of content coming out of the Future of the Car event taking place this week. So Financial Times pushing a lot of what's happening in that marketplace out at the minute. So keep an eye on the headlines and as they publish those press releases.
But that's all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.